710 KURV is operated by our Communications Group. The following viewpoints do not necessarily represent those of our Communications, its staff, or management.
Place of education. Right? Well, all right. 710 KRV, Talkback, Dr. Lawrence Gelman, home of the iron microphone. Streaming live on KURV.com, 1-800-580-8255, 1-800-580-TALK. What else? Oh, yeah, talkbackonline.com. Is that who I am? Yeah. We're here to educate, and it's process. I really didn't want to talk too much about the medical school. I have interesting things to talk about, but the bottom line is I don't understand it. I don't understand what they're talking about. And all I know is whatever they're telling you today is pretty much a lie. And you can pretty much guarantee the way this is going to play out is nothing to do with what you're hearing from. You know, it's amazing to me you have all these people, all these senators and these congressmen and all that who know nothing about medicine, nothing about health care, determining how a medical school should be done or built or managed or run or funded or any of that. Let me also show you it will bring no money whatsoever to the community. Okay? You can forget about that. That's not going to happen. But then again, that's not what it's for. Why does everybody miss the point? The point of the medical school is to increase the number of physicians in the underserved valley. That is the point of having a medical school, under the idea that if students will go back or stay in the place that they were trained to a higher degree than if they have to go elsewhere. We don't have a medical school, so the Valleyites who go elsewhere, most of them stay elsewhere because they don't have they become accustomed to spending 4 years in Houston or Dallas or New York and then another 4 years of residency or 5 years of residency somewhere else, and they'll often not come back to to the valley. So let's forget about the economic garbage, okay? That's not why we're building the darn thing. It's supposed to be to provide education. Do we need a medical school? I don't know. Can we support a medical school? Yes. Okay, yes, we can support it. We have enough people, we have enough population, we have enough everything, infrastructure, to support a medical school. Will that increase the number of physicians in the valley? The most important factor in physicians anywhere is economics. And unless the Medicare and Medicaid rules start benefiting doctors more and stop rewarding the crooks in healthcare, then the odds of the valley's problems with lack of specialists, which is the real problem that we have, that's not going to change. So the biggest driver of where a physician will go practice is availability and economics. And, of course, the Valley being heavy with Medicaid and Medicare ratcheting back physicians' reimbursements specifically in order to give it to Pfizer and other rich companies, taking away from the doctors, taking away from the patients, and give it to the rich corporations up in the Northeast and West Coast. It's the only reason that Medicare and Medicaid exist. Then we're always going to have problems with specialists in the Valley. So, I mean, I don't know. I can't figure out what the bill says. It says that, I don't know what the truth is. The bill says first 2 years in Hidalgo County, third and fourth years in Cameron County. Now, what kind of sense does that make? The third and fourth years are tied into the residency program. Does that mean the residency programs are going to go to Cameron County as well? If the residency programs are going to be in Hidalgo County, why do you send your third and fourth year students to Cameron County? That makes no sense. It doesn't make any sense at all, because the third and fourth years basically go through the hospitals and go around with the residents. So where the residents are, that's where the third and fourth years are. So I don't understand what they're up to. But when you have people representing us such as they are, what more can you expect? That's why the whole system is run so poorly. why it's so expensive, why it's completely out of control. I don't know. I don't want to talk too much. No one seems to know anything. You're reading in a newspaper. You're reading in a newspaper. They're confusing dollars and populations with the university. Talking about 28,000 students. What kind of nonsense is that? I mean, most of those students are already here. A medical school. How many medical students do you think they're going to have in our medical school? What I imagine it would be 60 or 80 at the most. Not 6,000 or 8,000, but 60 or 80 at the most. So, and I don't. No one knows how to ask the right questions. No one knows how to pin these guys down. But when you have these so-called representatives, what more can you expect but a bunch of confusion and nonsense? I guess we'll see. Of course, it has nothing to, they'll figure it out in Austin. They'll figure out what the Valley's going to get in Austin. That's exactly the way it's supposed to be. A bunch of white people in Austin determining how things are going to work out in the Valley. So really hot under the collar if I had a collar. I want to talk. Okay, there's a lot of hoopla. A lot of hoopla these days on taxes, IRS targeting conservative organizations for tax-exempt status and all this other garbage and nonsense. The politicians raising up their arms in protest as to the uncontrollable nature of the IRS. Who made the IRS? Who runs the IRS? Who controls the IRS? Who regulates? The Congress, the Senate. Give me a break. What are those guys yelling at us? They're the ones who do it. What a racket that is. But, it's like, I don't know. You send out you hire a bunch of thieves to go burglar houses, and then you're shocked when they're caught. Give me a break. The IRS is the Gestapo. You have a fascist tyranny as a government, and the IRS is a perfect example of that. Well, let's talk about taxes. Let's talk about the legitimacy of taxes. And it's all based, of course, upon the income tax, isn't it? Essentially, is the income tax constitutional? The personal income tax, is that constitutional? No, it's not. It's not constitutional. Let's take a look at let's take a look at what the Constitution says about taxes. Constitution says representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned. Okay, let's go through this step by step because there's a lot of terminology here. Now, you understand this was changed through an amendment, which was unconstitutional. We're going to go through every step about this. The Constitution originally stated representatives and direct taxes. What is a direct tax? A direct tax is a tax applied directly to the individual. An indirect tax is like a sales tax, or if a company is taxed something for their automobile and you buy the automobile, then you're indirectly paying for the tax through the increase in the price based upon that tax. So if you're taxed directly, that's because you're taxed directly. You can only, that means that you are taxed directly. Someone applies a tax to you. An indirect tax is some kind of add-on tax to something that you buy or a service that you purchase or something like that. You buy a television, there's a sales tax. That's an indirect tax. You have the guy making the television has to pay a tax for transporting or something like that across a federal highway. I don't know. Adds it onto the cost of television you pay for when you buy a television. That's an indirect tax, and that's essentially based upon your behavior. In other words, if I don't buy something, I don't pay a tax. Whereas a direct tax, you got to pay for it regardless of behavior. It's just because you had your existing. And what's the purpose of a direct tax? Well, the purpose of the direct tax primarily, originally, was to cover the costs of the common defense. So everyone has to pay for the common defense because we all receive the product of the common defense. We all receive the benefits of the common defense, whether we want it or not. We get it, and therefore the government can assess a direct tax so that everybody has to contribute for the common defense. Now, how can let's continue with what it says in the Constitution originally, what our founding fathers wanted. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states. Now, what does that mean? That means that the direct tax, the way our founding fathers conceived it, was that each state would be assessed a certain dollar amount based upon what? Well, it says right here, according to their respective numbers. So in other words, if you have one person, that's a certain dollar amount because it costs, the national defense costs a certain amount per person. So if you have one person, the state gets hit with a certain tax. If there's 10 people in your state, it gets hit with 10 times that amount. Then the state can determine how it's going to get that money, all right? But the assessment is not to the people, but to the state. So each state will pay a certain amount according to their respective numbers. That is why the term includes, when you go back and read it again, representatives and direct taxes. It's interesting. They put the two in the same in the same paragraph, in the same clause. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states, which may be included within this union according to the respective numbers. Okay, that means that the number of representatives a state has is based upon the number of people in the state. The amount of tax assessed to the state is dependent upon the number of people in the state. Okay, you see how how they did that. Okay, so that's important to understand how they did that. And so a direct tax shall be apportioned among the several states. So it is the state that gets hit with the tax assessment, and then the state then determines how they're going to get the tax from the people. There's no stipulations there exactly how the state is going to get from the people. Now, if you go to Section 9 of Article 1, and the only other reference to direct tax, the only other reference in the whole Constitution, no capitation or other direct tax. Okay, capitation is a direct tax, obviously. In other words, every person pays $10. Okay, every person pays. That is a capitation, which is a direct tax. Capitation is a direct tax. There are other direct taxes besides capitation. Any tax which I assess to an individual, any tax which we assess to an individual is a direct tax. Now, remember, direct taxes can only be assessed to the state, all right? Capitation is a direct tax. The capitation tax, the capitation is a direct tax, and direct taxes can only be applied to a state, okay? So the capitation tax, another state has 10, so they have to pay a tax on 10. State has 100, state has to pay a tax on 100. Then the state goes and collects it from the individual or corporation or whatever. It doesn't exactly say how that can be done. There's no restrictions on it, but it doesn't say any either. It doesn't necessarily say the state has to have an income tax. The state can collect it through excise taxes or other taxes, tolls and fees or whatever. They can collect it as long as but their assessment is based upon a number of people. The important thing to remember is no direct tax on the individual is permitted by the federal government. Direct taxes are permitted because they're not excluded specifically from states. Therefore, a state can apply a tax to an individual. The federal government cannot by the original Constitution. Now, let's see where that changed. Let's see where that changed. I'm going to find that here in a second. We're going to go to the amendments. Amendment, and it's the 16th Amendment in 1913. 1913 was a pretty crummy year in many respects. The 16th Amendment, what does it say? The Congress, which is an amendment. What's an amendment? An amendment is the way that the Constitution can be modified. An amendment is the way the Constitution can be modified. The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived, without apportionment among the several states and without regard to any census or enumeration. Essentially, this completely contradicts the original Constitution. Now, well, people say, oh, that's an amendment. Now it's part of the Constitution. Baloney. You just can't say whatever you want to say and subvert the Constitution. The Constitution specifically says that no direct tax can be applied to an individual. Specifically says that, okay? Only can be applied to a state, cannot be applied to an individual, because the state has no implied powers. The federal government has no implied powers. What does the Ninth Amendment says? The enumeration in the Constitution of certain powers shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. And the 10th Amendment says the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution are reserved to the states, respectively, or to the citizens. That means there are no implied powers that the federal government has. All implied powers and rights belong to the citizens or to the states. Therefore, the federal government says the Constitution says the federal government can apply a tax to the state based upon enumeration. It cannot apply a tax to an individual because it's not an enumerated power, and lacking that enumeration of powers, it cannot do so because there are no implied powers that can go to the federal government. The state can apply a direct tax and does. The 16th Amendment, of course, is completely illegitimate. It's not constitutional. The Constitution cannot be changed, okay? If you change it, you can modify, okay? You can modify. And the only legitimate modification, the legitimate modifications reduce the power of government. You cannot add power to the government. You cannot add power to the government. By the 9th and 10th Amendments, you cannot add power to the federal government. It is unconstitutional. Therefore, any amendment which adds power to the federal government is unconstitutional. And that's all there is to it. And it's so basic. Okay, now we got a bunch of fascists around the country. I mean, if someone points a gun to your head and takes your money, that obviously it's illegal, okay? But they have the power to do it because they got the gun and you don't, all right? Or they got the drop on you, or there's more of them than you. So you have to do it. You don't want to do it, but you have to do it. So the government, federal government says they're going to do this. It's unconstitutional. Absolutely, completely unconstitutional because they have no implied powers. Therefore, they cannot have a power which does not already exist in the Constitution. And the direct tax on the individual does not exist within the Constitution. Therefore, the personal income tax is unconstitutional. I know, it's a basic and a simple idea, but it's hard to drill it through all of you brainwashed people. The world is full of brainwashed people because we're taught in school. Look at the way the media handles this. Look at the way that the media handles people who don't pay taxes or avoid paying taxes like they're criminals. Look at the way these idiot media don't even understand. They don't understand the basic premise of the way the country is formed. You have a false premise and you base everything on a false premise. The federal government cannot apply an income tax or direct tax on an individual, cannot do so constitutionally. The fact that it does so doesn't make it constitutional or legitimate. But we under the false premise that the government can do so because of an amendment process, but the amendment process cannot subvert part of the Constitution, cannot change part of the Constitution. They would have to eliminate the 9th and 10th Amendments. in order to do this, which, of course, is also unconstitutional. Amendment means to modify, to improve. It does not mean to reverse. You cannot reverse. The amendment process is not meant to reverse. That is not what amendment means. If the reversal of something within the Constitution was allowed, then that process would have been permitted, a reversal of or removal of something within the Constitution. Anything that the amendment process does, which increases the power of the federal government or decreases the rights of the individuals or the states, is unconstitutional, and it doesn't matter what they tell you or what they say. That is all there is to it, and everything else is built on a false premise and a lie. So you're being lied to. You're being lied to. But that's what politicians do best. They lie. Okay. Take John, 7 KRV. Thanks for calling. What's your comment, please?
Well, my comment is I think everything's been screwed up for years.
Yeah.
Woodrow Wilson, FDR, socialism, communism, whatever we're headed for.
Fascism. Use the term fascism. Communism doesn't bother. You think communism does not bother Franklin Roosevelt?
No, of course.
It's like calling Stalin a communist. It doesn't bother him. It's like calling Hitler a fascist. It doesn't bother him, okay?
Right. So, I mean, everything has been, one president adds on to and compounds the issue and then gets worse. Clinton did this, and then the Republicans accuse Clinton of doing this. Then they try to impeach Nixon, and then they should have impeached Clinton, and Clinton said, no, you can't impeach me for what I did. And then we are with Barack Obama.
Yes. Of course, they're a bunch of gangsters, okay? They're a bunch of criminals, and they're a bunch of gangsters. That's who runs the country, a bunch of gangsters. We do not live in a free country. Okay?
No, we don't.
We live, if you think we live in a free country, go ahead and smoke marijuana and see what happens to you. Take cocaine and see what happens to you. Or how about this? Don't pay your income tax and see what happens to you. Don't pay your Social Security tax and see what happens to you. That is not a free country. We do not live in a free country.
No, we don't.
No,
we don't, and we haven't for years.
No, we haven't for a very long, very, very long period of time. We have not lived in a free country. But people live in tyrannies. People live in China under a tyrannical rule. They're over there. They're having they're there. They're existing. A whole, 3 generations lived under Soviet Union. 4 generations lived under the pre-dictatorship in Mexico. Most of the world is living in dictatorship now. The people in North Korea, dictatorship. They live there. They survive. Most of the world lives in misery and a dictator. Most of Africa, people live there in abject misery. And there they are. They're not doing anything. So, we're here. We live in a nicer fascist tyranny, a nicer one than maybe Nigeria. But nevertheless, it's still a fascist tyranny. So, the whole thing, the media is such a bunch of idiots. Our school system is run by such a bunch of drones. Incredible. Anything else?
No, that's it.
That's it. Okay, thanks for calling, John. Well, and, it's so exasperating how we miss the basic point. I mean, it'd be like going into a debate, and the debate says, with the premise, the world is flat. Now debate where Asia is in relation to the United States or something. It's ridiculous. And that's what we're having. We said we're going to have a debate based upon a false premise. The debate isn't whether the IRS is doing things properly or improperly. The debate should be why the IRS exists. The debate shouldn't be whether people are paying their fair share of income taxes. The debate should be why income taxes exist, because they're unconstitutional. And these are the idiots that we have running our country, Democrat and Republican, all a bunch of gangsters and mafiosos. The whole system is a bunch of nonsense, a tragic nonsense that we're all paying for, run by a bunch of gangsters, bunch of arrogant narcissists. That's who we have representing us. They don't represent us. They're nothing but emissaries of the central government, whether it's from Austin or Washington, D.C. There's no freedom in this country. That's because they allow you to walk around. The only reason they allow you to walk around is so you can make money, so you can support the government and all their friends, cronies, relatives, and contributors. That's all they care about. What do you think's going on around here? It's just money taken from the producer, given to the parasites, given to the government, which is the biggest parasite of all, or to these big government-subsidized corporations like General Motors and Goldman Sachs and all these other gigantic corporations. You know, all this money goes to the rich eventually. That's who these guys support in Washington, D.C. Look at the stock market. All the money stolen from the producers going to these rich people making their gym shoes and their cell phones in China. Forcing psychiatric drugs down your children. Hundreds of thousands of children forced to take psychiatric drugs in order to enrich the pharmaceutical companies. Well, you know, billions of diapers purchased by taxpayer dollars for nonsensical reasons so Kimberly Clark can become rich. That's all this is a transference of funds from the producers to those who have influence with the central government. We live in a fascist tyranny. And it's just, and you know, it's like the movie The Matrix, okay? You're looking at something, you don't even know what you're looking at. You don't even realize who's pulling the strings. You think that you're doing what you want to do. Baloney. You're doing what the government is telling you to do because you conform your behavior to what the government allows. And you think because the government doesn't have a leash on you that you can see that you're free. You're not free. You think you're free? Go smoke marijuana. Go take cocaine. Don't pay your income tax. Don't pay your Social Security tax. See what happens to you. You're not free. Let's talk a little bit more about this tax issue. The IRS is in hot water because they targeted so-called conservative organizations for audits and delaying their exemptions for a tax, or what do you call that? A tax-exempt status. What is this tax-exempt status? What is all that all about? Well, friends and relatives of the government get special favors, and one of the special favors they get is to be tax-exempt. Clearly, because so-called conservative organizations hate the government doesn't want to give them exempt status. Now, why not? Well, because economic independence is something the government doesn't want you to have. Because the more independent you are, the more of a risk you are to the government. The government hates independence, obviously. Government wants to control. They hate independence. And so the more independent someone is, the less they need government and the more government hates them. Economic independence is a form of independence. If you're not reliant upon government welfare, if you're not a Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, some other government corrupt agency-run organization, a bunch of mafiosos, well, the government can't control you. But if you're on Medicaid, government controls you. If you're on Medicare, government controls you. If you're on Social Security, government controls you. That's why they want to control you. The more economically independent you are, the less control they have. Furthermore, the government doesn't want you to be competing with them in any way, shape, or form. And so the less money you have, the less economic independence you have, the less risk the government has of an independent economic force against them. Okay, I have to go to a break. 7 to KRV, Talkback, Dr. Lawrence Gelman, home of their microphone. Be back after a short break.
710 KURV invites you to watch the AP Video News at KURV.com. The Associated Press is the world's leading news agency, delivering breaking global news. Click on the AP Video News banner to view extended video feeds of today's top stories, eye-opening science and technology reports, and get all the latest showbiz news. The AP Video News on KURV.com is presented by Home Entertainment by D-Tronics and sponsored by Vela's Pharmacy, exclusively in the Valley on News Talk 710 KURV.
Come on down to Fiesta Chevrolet, where the price is always right. Come in today and you pay what we pay.
That's right. Just ask for Tony Pena and pay below cost on any 2013 Chevy model. Tell him what else, Adrian.
You pay what we pay. Up to $12,000 off on 2013 Texas Edition Crew Cab.
Choose from a Chevy Sonic or Cruze for just $99 a month. Plus, bring in your trade and we'll pay it off.
You pay what we pay. Only at Fiesta Chevrolet on the corner of Expressway 281 and Trenton in Edinburgh.
Chevy, find new road.
Dale gas.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. You have just hours left to throw your $2 into the Powerball pot, currently at $600 million, second largest jackpot in U.S. history.
Last month, California became the largest state to play and joins 42 other states. Lottery official says California so far is helping the jackpot grow. They've sold over $83 million worth of ticket sales. And lottery officials believe that number will continue to grow today, since that drawing is tonight and people are going to be waiting till the last minute to buy up their lottery tickets.
Fox's Michelle Macaluso in Clovis, California. Search warrants have been executed by the FBI and other law enforcement agencies in a rice and cake case. 2 letters containing the deadly poison intercepted this week at a post office in Washington state. Fox News, we report, you decide.
Your 710 KURV AccuWeather forecast. Smoke will continue to filter the sunshine as we head through the afternoon. Windy and warm as well. Highs from 93 in the lower valley to 99 in the upper valley. Tonight, partly cloudy, mild, lows from 74 to 80. Highs tomorrow and Monday, 92 to 98. Breezy and warm with a mix of clouds and sunshine. I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Bill Degger on the Valley's official weather station, 710 KURV.
710 KURV. Streaming live at KURV.com. Powered by Texas Mutual Insurance.
710 KURV is operated by our communications group.
Okay, we're back. 710 KRV, Talkback, Dr. Lawrence Gelman. 1-800-580-8255, 1-800-580-TALK, streaming live on KURV.com. Turn off Barack Obama here. I wish it were that simple. What else? Oh yeah, talkbackonline.com is my website. They're all. You have these idiots in the media that are saying that it was perfectly legitimate for the IRS to be strict, holding people or corporations to the fire as far as tax-exempt status, but the tax-exempt status has been too loosely applied, and there's too many people, too many groups which are tax-exempt, which should not be tax-exempt. Now, the government has created rules that determines what permits an organization to be tax-exempt. Educational facilities, schools are tax-exempt. Some fraternal organizations are tax-exempt, but I'm going to focus on one interesting that never gets brought up in the media. Labor unions are tax-exempt. Now, why should labor unions be tax-exempt? The part of the whatever government laws, those organizations which are considered tax-exempt fall under these stipulations found in the 501 Act, whatever that is. And in there is the regulations that permit an organization to be free of federal taxes. Lumped with labor is agricultural or horticultural organizations, which is peculiar in and of itself, why labor should be involved there. But whatever, maybe that's another discussion. Okay, what is the government excuse for exempting these gigantic multi-billion-dollar corporations from the income tax? What is the reason for that? Well, it says, the government says labor unions can be exempt from federal income tax because their function is the betterment of the conditions of those engaged in labor, agricultural, or horticultural pursuits. Is that what the heck does that mean? The betterment of the conditions? I mean, who determines what betterment means? The improvement in the grade of their products. Really? That's why the labor unions are tax exempt, because labor unions help improve the quality of products. Is that what we know labor unions do? Don't they really kind of inhibit modernization and the development of a higher degree of efficiency in their respective occupations? Is this a joke? This has got to be a joke. How do labor unions increase efficiency? I mean, if anything, they increase inefficiency. That's why all these industries left the country. Because labor unions made everything so expensive and inefficient. So there's the nonsense of why labor unions are considered tax exempt. Let's take a look at what labor unions are. Let's take a look at labor unions. Well, first of all, they became tax exempt in 1909, and then in 1940. So there's nothing they do which requires tax exemption. But let's take a look at it. In 1914, they became exempt from antitrust and monopoly rules. Now, let's take a look at, well, let me just take this call first, I guess. Okay, 7 KRV, Raul calling from McAllen. Thanks for calling.
Thank you, Dr. Gelman, for what you do. You're very enlightening, and you do give us guidance, and you're a great asset to the entire valley.
Thanks.
I want to talk about the direct tax, which is actually a progressive tax that grows governments and takes our liberties away. On that subject, I want to say we are overregulated, overtaxed, and overwhelmed by the choices our legislatures make and put into law, and they are not affected by those laws. Our legislators are in the business of lining their pockets, living the high life, and retiring rich men and women with free health care and pensions for life. All the time, they are not paying into Social Security, not paying taxes, and telling us we have to pay for the illegal immigrants and the poor that are in turn paid to have children and not to work while they themselves are exempt also. While they continually vote themselves raises in one of the worst times since the Great Depression. To me, that's tyranny.
Yes.
What do you think, Dr. Gelman?
Oh, that's exactly who they are. A bunch of gangsters stealing from us to enrich themselves and, like, as you said, line their pockets. Yeah, that's it. That's who they are. Anything else?
Yes. Yes. I got a Perry moment. I forgot what I was going to say. But okay, thank you, and I'll just call back some other time.
Yeah, that's fine. It happens to me on the air. Okay, thanks for calling.
Bye.
All right. So let's take a look at labor unions for a second. There's no other charitable organization or a tax-exempt organization like the labor union, because everything the labor union does should deny it tax exemption. No other tax-exempt organization requires contributions. No other tax-exempt, well, okay, there may be a couple. The National Football League requires contributions, okay, for their union, all right. But there's still, okay, but for the most part, charitable organizations, no charitable organization, no private school, no church requires contributions for I guess private schools, if you want to go to school, then you have to pay you have to pay for that. So there's always going to be one or this or that or the other, but in general, when it comes to labor unions, but the people who are paying into schools for private school, their employment is not based upon their kid going to a private school. If I'm a member of the United Auto Workers, for me to have a job, I have to pay into the union. And so there's all these distinctions which separate unions from every other tax-exempt group. No tax-exempt group violates the rules as much as labor unions. Labor unions cross state lines, okay, and they block trade. The antitrust acts were targeted towards restraint of trade. Who restrains trade more than labor unions? Okay. There's no organization that forces people to pay in order to have a job. That's labor unions, okay? So they should not be tax exempt just for that alone. Furthermore, you're not allowed to have political activity. To be tax exempt, you can't have political activity. And who has more political activity than the labor unions? To be tax exempt, you cannot have a profit in your organization. Labor unions have massive profits, and with those profits, they buy hotels, they buy golf courses, they buy resorts in order to give places for their elite to spend money and have their girlfriends. That's what they do, labor unions. Okay, so labor unions violate everything. They are involved in political activity, which is you cannot if you're tax exempt. You're forced to contribute, which means you shouldn't be tax exempt. They have a profit, which they conceal in the purchase of hotels and other things, so-called educational purposes where they have their seminars and meetings. It's a bunch of garbage. Okay, so there's absolutely no reason for them to be tax exempt. As far as monopolistic behavior, of course they're monopolistic. If General Motors, if you're going to work for General Motors, you have to belong to United Auto Workers, or you can't work for General Motors. That's monopoly. If you're in the union, if you're General Motors and and the union wants a contract you don't agree to, they can go on strike. Not only in that, but all over the country. That's restraint of trade. That's antitrust. So the labor unions have no right to be tax exempt under any guidelines, and are based and must be and commit antitrust restraint of trade. They are so flagrantly involved in monopolistic and anti-trade behavior that there had to be a special stipulation put into the Clayton Act, which modified the Sherman Act of 1890. The Clayton Act of 1914 specifically absolved unions, labor unions, from the stipulations of the Sherman Act, an antitrust and restraint of trade legislation. Why was that necessary? Well, it was necessary because the unions were so flagrantly involved in everything the government said business should not do, which is monopolistic and restraint of trade behavior. And the unions were so heavily involved in doing that they fit that definition to a T, that they had to exclude. The unions weren't doing it. You wouldn't have to have a law made to absolve them of having to obey those rules. If they weren't doing it, you wouldn't need to have made the laws to absolve them of the rules. This shows you how the government behaves. Now, why does the government favor labor unions? Well, what does a labor union do? Well, the first thing a labor union does is it takes away if you belong to a union, your loyalty is now shifted from the employer who pays your salary and is now shifted over to the labor union that takes away your money in dues. And so, the only way in slavery organization like unions can exist where they require membership and you're required to pay dues and they can spend the money any way they want, the only way they can get away with that is through government. Only government can allow slavery. Without government, you can't have slavery. Government is the force that maintains slavery. The only way a union can exist is through government enforcement of allowing labor unions to exist. Therefore, therefore, the employee becomes loyal to the union and disloyal to the employer, which is interesting. And the employee now becomes loyal to the union is loyal to the government. And so the employee now becomes loyal to the government. And do you suppose maybe that's what government actually wants? Of course it's what it wants. Therefore, everyone that belongs to a union likes big government, and therefore unions like big government, and that's why unions support those in government who protect unions and who want big government. So that's the way. So in order to make unions stronger, the government makes special rules which allows the unions to get away with activity that no one else can get away with. And that is why they're tax exempt, even though there's no reason for them to be tax exempt. They're profit-making, multi-billion-dollar organizations. They're involved with interstate restraint of trade, so they are monopolistic. They cause a restraint of trade. Therefore, they're in violation of every single antitrust legislation that has been passed, more so than any other agency or group or company saving federal government, which is the biggest parasitic monopoly in the world. The United States federal government is the largest parasitic organization in the world. The government is way out of control. It does things that it was not meant to do. You look at the Constitution, there are enumerated powers which they're allowed to do, and nothing else. If you look at those enumerated powers, there are 17 of them, 8 of which relate to national defense. So there's only like 9 things the government can do, post offices, stuff like that, which the Constitution allows. But what do they? They do everything they want to do. They are involved with things which they are not permitted to do. But they do so because they have the power to do so. And the saddest thing is that, it'd be one thing if the people realize that we live in a fascist tyranny and that that the government controls the media and the system of education and all that in order to maintain power. What really galls me is the Dan Rathers and the Tom Brokaws and the Katie Courics and all the rest of these feeble-minded government puppets, or puppets of government, to try to tell us otherwise. The system of education exists to indoctrinate, to indoctrinate people to believe that the government is necessary and the government is benevolent. The system of education creates a whole class of illiterate drones that are government dependent, that are always going to be needing government. 50 million people on food stamps, 40 million people on Social Security and Medicare, 60 million people on Medicaid. Gosh knows what else is going on out there. Every one of those people dependent upon government, vote for big government, to steal from the producer and give to the parasite. That's what government does. It steals from the producer to maintain itself and to maintain the parasites and to increase the parasitic class so that the parasites will vote in for big government. The parasitic class is not just people on welfare. It is also, depends what you call welfare. But it's not just poor people. It's rich. In fact, all the money ends up in the rich. Who's on welfare? Goldman Sachs. Every financial organization, the banks, they're on welfare. Government welfare. Pfizer, Glaxo, Boston Scientific. Every large corporation, or most of them, not everyone, but most of them, are on government welfare. That's where all the money goes. All the big hospital corporations, government welfare. Lawyers, government welfare. The entire lawyer industry, attorney industry, the product liability industry exists because of government and no other reason but government. The Drug Enforcement Agency, the eavesdropping, the spying on all people, all of this illegal government activity, all our foreign adventurism unconstitutional. All of these rules by government, unconstitutional. The fact that the federal government touches so much of what you do in your daily life, all of that is unconstitutional. The fact that they do it doesn't make it legitimate. I mean, there's a lot of illegitimacy in the world that goes on. The Soviet Union was not legitimate. It went on for 70 years. China is not legitimate. North Korea is not legitimate. Cuba is not legitimate. These are not legitimate countries in the sense that they allow their people to be free and independent as natural law dictates. What does natural law say? Natural law says that we are born free and independent, that man is to be free and independent. What does government do? Takes away your freedom, takes away your independence. That's what government does. Some of them take it away a little bit, some of them take away a lot. But they all take away your freedom and independence. And that is what governments do. Government is evil. Thomas Paine said, all governments are evil. The government, what did the Declaration of Independence say? The government is there to guarantee your rights. That's what it's there for. That was such a shock. Tell that to the King of England and the King of France. They didn't much care to hear about that. What? Government is not here to guarantee rights, according to them. Government is here to take care of the aristocrat. To take money from the producer, to take away their freedom and independence, and to give it to the aristocrat, to give it to the congressman, to give it to the senator, give it to the president. That's what the government exists for. That's the only reason it exists, is to steal your money, to steal what you produce. Half of the United States is now on welfare. Half the United States pays no federal income tax. And that half is perfectly willing and able and happy for the government to take away the money from the producers. Look, Barack Obama, what's he worried about? The Internal Revenue Service targeted conservative organizations. The people who support Barack Obama hate conservative organizations. They're cheering. They're happy the Internal Revenue Service is going after the Tea Party and all of that, because that's what the people who support Barack Obama want. All those people, they support Barack Obama because he is a fascist. Not despite that he's a fascist, but because he is a fascist. So what do you think is going to happen? Do you think all those people who voted for Barack Obama because he's a fascist are now going to not vote for him because it's proven he's a fascist? You give me a break. And the Republicans, what's their response? To try to be as big as fascists as the Democrats. So the government response is, the federal response, that's what a Republican response. 125 million Americans do not vote. Why is that? Because what's the point? One fascist party versus another. Why should I give my vote to support fascism? Why vote for Castro? Why vote for Stalin? Why vote for Hitler? Why vote for Barack Obama? They're all a bunch of fascists. So Barack Obama got 65 million votes. 125 million people did not vote. What number is bigger, 125 million or 65 million? Well, if you went to the system of public education, you might have trouble figuring that out. So I'll give you the answer. 125 million is bigger than 65 million. In fact, it's almost twice as big as 65 million. So the people who didn't vote outnumbered Barack Obama's vote by 60 million. Now, if you add the 61 million that Mitt Romney got, who's a useless. So between the people who don't vote and the people who voted for Romney, that's 186 million people did not vote for Barack Obama. So Barack Obama got 65 million votes and 186 million people who don't want him. 186 million people do not want Barack Obama. 65 million people do. Well, which number is bigger? Well, for those of you who went to the system of public education, I'll give you the answer. 186 million is bigger than 65 million. In fact, it's a lot bigger. In fact, it's almost 3 times bigger. So 3 times the number of people in the United States do not want Barack Obama than wanted him, but Barack Obama's president. And he gets a mandate because Tom Brokaw says he has a mandate, because Katie Couric says he has a mandate, because Oprah Winfrey says he has a mandate. What mandate is that when 185 million people don't want you and 65 million people do? Which number is bigger? So this is what we have. This is what we have. This is how the country functions. It would be bad enough to be that way, and we knew about it. What's really bad is that we are that way, and we think that's fine. We think it's constitutional. We think it's legitimate. Well, just because it's legally legislated does not make it legitimate or constitutional. The Nuremberg laws, which took away the citizenship rights of Jews in Europe, in Germany, was legal and legally obtained. Does that make it legitimate? Have to go to a break, 7 KRV, for useless Fox News. Might as well get your Coke. And I don't mean the snorting kind. 1-800-580, what? 1-800-580-8255, 1-800-580-TALK. Streaming live on KURV.com. I had to think of something to talk about the next hour. Back after this break.
Our Pilgrim Fathers adopted the Bible as the law order of their government. The source of law in any culture is the God of that society. If its source is humanist reason, then humanist reason is the God. Modern humanism is now the God of America. It is possible to do away with one religion and replace it with another, but it is impossible to do away with religion itself. The foundations of law are always religious. No society exists without a religious foundation. For example, the religion of Mr. Obama is neither Christian nor Muslim. It is humanistic with its man-made laws. It is impossible for liberal humanists to be consistent and still tolerate God's law. There is no neutrality. It's one or the other. There is no such thing as the secular versus the religious. They're both religious, and Christ is Lord over both. churchofthekingmcallen.com. Side with God against self and be blessed.
I think it's every parent's duty to protect their kids. So when it came time to choose a car for my daughter, I knew I had to choose something with really high safety ratings. So a friend of mine from work had just sent her son off to college in a Subaru Legacy. I asked her and she said, Bird Ogden Subaru is the place to go.
I've always loved Subarus. They all look so cute and sporty. So when my dad brought home my new Impreza, I was super excited. I was like, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Come see us today at Bird Ogden Subaru, corner of Trenton and Business 281 in Edinburgh. Dale gas.
You're so annoying.
You're so annoying.
Stop copying me.
Stop copying me.
Mom, tell her to stop copying me.
Mom, tell her to stop talking to me.
Kids will spend 10 minutes copying everything their sibling says.
You're such a doofus.
You're such a doofus.
How about 2 minutes to brush their teeth? Brushing for 2 minutes now can save your child from severe tooth pain later. For fun 2-minute videos to watch while brushing, visit 2min2x.org. 2 minutes, twice a day. They have the time.
Mom!
Fair and balanced coverage from Fox News Radio, the most trusted name in news. This is 710 KURV Edinburgh and our communications station.
Fox News Radio, I'm Hank Weinblum. Republicans are demanding answers from the IRS and the Obama administration about the targeting of conservative groups. Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann says she thinks signs point to the White House.
This didn't just happen. This wasn't a low-level rogue employee. Impossible. Didn't happen. This was a political directive.
The Obama administration is saying it won't be distracted by the IRS scandal. The president in his weekly address talking about unemployment.
We need to create even more good middle-class jobs, and we've got to do it faster.
Tea Party news, and it's not about the IRS. At Virginia's statewide Republican convention, a Tea Party favorite won the nomination for governor today. Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli has fought hard against federal mandates, including Obamacare. He'll take on former Democratic National Chairman Terry McAuliffe in November. Passengers were thrown around the train car when 2 Metro North commuter trains collided in Connecticut last night.
She was kind of in and out of consciousness. She kept asking the same question over and over again, like, what happened? Where are we? I just kept telling her, we were on the train. It crashed.
Nobody died, but 3 people were critically injured. Train service between New York and Boston could be disrupted for several days. Quite a scare for 34 people on a U.S. Airways flight landing in Newark, New Jersey last night. The landing gear didn't come down. The turboprop plane from Philadelphia made a belly landing. Nobody hurt. What would you do if you suddenly find yourself $600 million richer? That's what Powerball players are dreaming about as they get ready for tonight's drawing. This woman in Texas in a charitable frame of mind.
10% I think should go to our church, first of all. 10% to them, and then, of course, to charity. A lot to charity.
If there's a heavy dose of last-minute buying, the Powerball payout could top the all-time lottery record from around the world, $656 million. You're listening to Fox News Radio. Fair and balanced.
Your 710 KURV AccuWeather forecast. Smoke will continue to filter the sunshine as we head through the afternoon. Windy and warm as well. Highs from 93 in the lower valley to 99 in the upper valley. Tonight, partly cloudy, mild, lows from 74 to 80. Highs tomorrow and Monday, 92 to 98, breezy and warm with a mix of clouds and sunshine. I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Bill Degger on the Valley's official weather station, 710 KURV.
710 KURV is operated by our Communications Group. The following viewpoints do not necessarily represent those of our Communications, its staff, or management.
(710) KRV Talkback. Dr. Lawrence Gelman home on the iron microphone. 1-800-580-8255. 1-800-580-TALK. Streaming live on KURV.com. Our website is talkbackonline.com. And so I can't think of anything new. Let me just take this call from Scott. 710 KRV, Scott.
Yeah, Dr. Gelman, isn't it just basically true the IRS is nothing more than a shield for the politicians, the politicians' way of being able to control us a little bit more? And
bit.
Well, everything we do, it doesn't matter. You're on your cell phone, you're on your computer. Same thing. It's another cabinet for the politicians to protect themselves, just like the Patriot Act and Homeland Security is.
Scott,
I mean, they're recording what we're saying right now, and if they get pissed off because we stir up too much caca on them, they'll turn around, and what they'll do to us is put the IRS on us and audit us. And even though we dot our I's and cross our T's and we've got accountants or CPAs doing our books, it's still a pain in the rear to have to go through what the government can put on us through the IRS. We're controlled from the time we're born till the time we die, and that's the way the government has it set up. And people,
hang on there, Scott.
You open your mouth up too much, they come down on it.
That's right. I agree. Settle down. Did you ever see a movie with Brad Pitt and Anthony Hopkins, something Mr. Black, or the one where Brad Pitt comes back as Death?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Nice long movie, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Now, if you remember that movie, the funniest part of that movie, it's not a comedy, the funniest part of the movie is, remember when, let's see, Anthony Hopkins, just trying to remember this. Anthony Hopkins is a big businessman, I don't know, big media mogul or something, and they're trying to take the company away from him, right?
Yep.
And against his will, behind this, nasty characters. And then they're going to stop that. So Joe Black, right? Meet Joe Black. That's the movie. Yep. Joe Black is there with Anthony Hopkins, with like the board of the media chain, with the guys who are trying to take away his Anthony Hopkins thing. And so they're going to get these guys trying to take away from Anthony Hopkins, because Joe Black is going to identify who he is, because they're always, through the whole movie, who's this guy? Who's this guy that's hanging around with Anthony Hopkins? Who is that guy? So now he's going to identify himself, and so Joe Black, Brad Pitt's going to identify himself, and Anthony Hopkins thinks he's going to identify himself as Death. But Joe Black identifies himself as the Internal Revenue Service. Now think about that for a second. Internal Revenue Service is more fearsome than Death, right? Because,
absolutely.
I mean, if you're trying to scare these guys, and you would think what's going to scare them more than saying, hey, I'm supporting Anthony Hopkins, I'm Death, so watch out. And instead he says he's from the Internal Revenue Service. And that scares those guys more than if he was Death. If he had said he was Death, they would have said, who cares? Everybody dies. What do we care? Oh, Internal Revenue Service, oh my God, you can get me when I'm alive. So
they can make life miserable for you for years upon years upon years upon years. And you know what? It's so funny that they always say, Obama's always talking about, well, I didn't know this, or I didn't know that, or this happened that I didn't know about, or this. Hey, he knows everything. I don't care what anyone says. He knows every little thing that goes on, and everything is under his watch. I guarantee it.
Obama is a useful dupe of the white power structure in the northeastern part of the United States. That's all he is. He's just a dupe. And he went to Harvard, doesn't make any difference. He's stupid. His wife is stupid and ignorant. His wife is Marie Antoinette, let them eat cake. or grow your garden, whatever she's doing. Let's understand where the real power is. The real power is in the northeastern elitists, Anglo-Saxon in this case, in our country, Anglo-Saxon northeastern elitists that promote abortion, that promote income tax, that promote welfare to keep all the rest of us down. Internal Revenue Service is the Gestapo. Just like the Nazis, knock on your door at night. You have no due process. None. The Internal Revenue Service, they knock on your door, send you a letter at night. You go to their offices, and you're never seen again. They lock up your business. They confiscate your bank accounts. They can do whatever the hell they want. The biggest.
They can take away the freedom of speech, too, big time.
Absolutely. And if you don't believe that, say something against the IRS and see what happens to you. The thing is that the Internal Revenue Service is the Gestapo. And it's not necessary for them to audit everybody. All they need to do is make examples of people. So it's intimidation. I mean, I have not been audited in a long time. But what deters me, what forces me to pay taxes? Intimidation. The fear of the IRS coming in and basically taking everything that you have and everything you ever will have, or padlocking your business or doing whatever they can. They obey no rules or laws. They are the judiciary police of Mexico. They are the KGB of Russia. They are the Gestapo of Nazi Germany. Why do you think the KGB and the Gestapo and the judicial police existed? To put fear into the hearts of the people. I mean, that's what they weren't there to do anything other than that. The IRS exists to put fear into the hearts of the American producer. And that's what they do.
That's why President Obama, when you see him, when Congress starts acting like they're real tough or something, especially Bonner, all of a sudden, they're acting real tough. He starts putting his threats on them, and they start fearing him. And it's so funny because I don't see why they should be fearing him at all, because, he's going to get his way any way he finds, a way around it.
Well, you have to remember that John Boehner and every other jackass in the Republican Party, which now includes Marco Rubio, unfortunately, is in the Republican Party, and they're all the same. They all belong to the same club. You have to look at it this way, Scott. These like country clubs, they have these intramural soccer matches or intramural golf, right? One team against another, and they'll try to beat each other, right? But the bottom line is, in the end, they all belong to the same club. They all belong to the same club.
So all the politicians basically nowadays are all just a bunch of clones. And the unions, when you're talking about the unions, they're nothing but pals of these people. They're just puppets. They're also clones. And all they do with the politicians is they contribute to their campaigns, and all the people are all propaganda from one end to the other end are members of the union. They really don't have much choice because the unions control them too, because they're basically the government. And what they do is make them all basically vote for whoever they think is the biggest part of the government, the biggest man. What's going to run the government?
Let's take a look at the system of public education and their unions. What are those? First of all, what do the teachers teach to children? That government is good and necessary and essential and benevolent. All right. Election time, the unions give all their money to big government, and usually that's Democrats because they're big government. They give all their money to Democrats, so the Democrats will pass laws protecting the labor unions. Then in election time, all these teachers go out there and all these school people go out there and they march around supporting big government programs. And you see like all this attacks upon school vouchers right now in Texas by these union-promoted, union-supported organizations. So you're exactly right. It's all hand in glove. One hand washes the other. The unions are part of government. They support government. Unions could not exist without government. All the people who are school teachers, even if they don't support Democrats, doesn't matter. Their union dues go to support Democrats. And so, and if the school teachers want gay marriage, which they do, then you have to support gay marriage, even if you don't want to. And so that's the way these organizations, but that's the way the government has structured it on purpose. They've done that on purpose in order to maintain power. So, I mean, the unions are simply an arm of the government, the same as the media, same as the system of public education. They're all arms of the government. But what's the surprise? That's the way it is in every tyranny, and we're nothing but a tyranny right now.
Well, the only way we're going to get out of this is let it run its course, because eventually the way this whole system's going with this government, they're going to do their own selves in. They're going to shoot themselves in the foot themselves. We don't even have to help.
Well, you see, the thing is, the government tries to draw a balance. It needs a producing class, because without the producing class, there's no wherewithal to support the government and the parasites. So the government cannot really destroy the producing class entirely, but it tries to draw a balance, keep the producing class weak, so that they can't endanger or threaten the government. But the problem is most politicians, as you well know, are stupid, okay? So they usually shift the balance way to the parasites. That's why you have Nigeria and Kenya and places like that, is because where people live in abject poverty and misery, most of the Middle East, most of Asia, all of Africa essentially, much of the United States, and Central South America. I mean, most of the rest of the world, they live in abject misery. They don't realize it because everybody around them is in the same misery. And so because they're stupid and they don't know how to draw a proper balance. But for a government, it's far more important to maintain power than to have a prosperous country. It is, and that's why Castro exists. Everyone knows that Cuba is, people live in misery and poverty. But for Castro, it's much better for him and his cronies that the country be in misery, but that they maintain power, because that's the ultimate goal.
Well, Doctor, when you talk about 50% of the people in this country are parasites and have to rely on the government, well, if you look at the other 50%, how much is that? About 50% of that working at federal or state government, and the other 25% are the producers.
No, because I count all federal and public employees are parasites. Okay, they belong to the parasitic class.
5% at least now.
Well, no, you're right. I mean, I think 51% of people pay no income tax. So right away, all those belong to the parasitic class by definition, right? I mean, they take and give nothing, so they're parasites. Then you have the 49%, and many of those are also in the parasitic class. Because I'm sure that Mitt Romney was a parasite. He makes money, so he's a part of the 49%, but he's still a parasite. And so, but the thing is that the parasites in the 49% are the very wealthy, like Warren Buffett and people like that, who's a parasite, and because he's a government supporter. Bloomberg, government supporter. All these guys are government supporters. They make incomes. But there's not that many of them as far as numbers because they're very, very wealthy. And so, but I figure you're probably right. About another 5% belong to the parasitic class. So it's probably like 55 to 45. The bottom line is we're outnumbered, 55 to 45 permanently. So the producing class is, obviously, the producing class is always going to be the minority, right? It's always going to be the minority. It's hard to be a producer. It's much easier to be a consumer and a parasite, much harder to be a producer. So they're always going to be in the minority. So we're always going to be outnumbered. The producers are always going to be outnumbered. So I don't know how you get around that. That's why government is always dangerous, because government always promotes parasitism, and there's always more parasites than producers. So government always has the edge. So, but the founding fathers thought they'd figure out a way with the Constitution, because they knew government was parasites. So they created a Constitution to basically reduce the amount of parasitism from the government. But what did the government do? It undermined, perverted, and subverted the Constitution. Why? Because the Constitution was preventing the government from being the government, and that's why they subverted it. So that's what we have. If we were a constitutional democracy, democratic republic, things would be a big difference. But we're not. We're not. So we're a fascist tyranny. Still there?
Yeah, Doctor, I was going to ask you one more thing here.
Yeah.
The two Russians that caused the bombing up there in Boston,
yeah.
The last one just said basically the same thing like what Timothy McVeigh said when they burned down the Waco Davidian compound over there when he was ticked off about that. He said, we did this because we're upset about all the Arabs and the Muslims that were killed and the civilians, mostly the civilians that were killed and massacred in Afghanistan and Iraq. And it was a revenge thing for doing what we did.
Yeah, of course. That's true.
Why, if it's 2014, why not now we can totally pull out of Afghanistan and out of the Middle East? Why do we not do that right now and have to wait another year and cut our losses down and quit getting these people really mad at us to keep pulling this on us? Because we're not making anybody happy over there by killing civilians and killing Arabs.
How many politicians were killed in the World Trade Center attack, do you think? Like none? Okay.
None.
Nothing. Okay, how many politicians were killed in the Boston Marathon deal?
I didn't hear of any.
Right. And so what do they care? They don't care. They're well protected. Barack Obama.
They want an eye for an eye. They want as many Arab civilians that were killed by us to have U.S. civilians killed by them.
Right. Barack Obama has a fighter jet. I mean, think about this for a second. Barack Obama has a fighter jet covering him at all times. Think about that for a second. Okay. What do they care? Nothing's going to happen to them. All right. So. And they don't care how many Americans get killed. What the hell do they care how many Americans get killed? So, now, okay, let me ask you this. You're king of England, right? You're king of England. That's a pretty good, nice job. Why do you want to go ahead and attack France and take over their kingdom? My point is that these guys never have enough. They never have enough. You got the United States. You're president of the United States. Not enough. I want to own the Middle East. I want to own. Why does Russia have to invade Afghanistan or Germany or anybody else? Why? Isn't it? You ever see the size of Russia? Isn't that enough? There's never enough for these people. Barack Obama doesn't have enough. He wants to be. It's not enough for him to be president of the United States. He wants to be king of the world. Okay, that's why we're in Afghanistan. That's why we're in the Middle East, because these guys want to be king of the world. But, Scott, let me ask you this. Let's say we were like another country. We're not the United States, in another country. And because we're another country, we have Russian troops in military bases in the United States. And once in a while, they release a drone and they kill somebody here and they kill somebody there. People, let's say, if you were here, Scott, you, me, if we're United States citizens, and we have these Russian troops in military bases, kind of doing what they want to do, I think that we would be pretty upset about that, don't you think? I think we'd be pretty upset, even though we're rational, normal people. I don't think we'd much care for that. And maybe some of us might say, you know what, these guys got to go. Well, why should their thinking be different over there? You're exactly right. Why are we in Afghanistan? It's not even a country, for God's sake. There's a bunch of tribes sitting around in the desert. What the hell are we doing over there?
It's all politics and a power control with Mr. President Obama is what it is, and he's once again playing his power control because, as far as I know, there's not a whole lot of oil in Afghanistan, and it's a really rough.
No, but it's an easy way to get into the Middle East. You set up your bases over there.
I know. We're basically in the Middle East over there to keep our eyes on Pakistan and keeping our eyes on Syria and they want their foot in the door there. But the only problem is every time they start getting into fights or we're losing 19-year-old and 20-year-old kids over there for no reason
it's
at all.
Sad.
There's no reason whatsoever. That's just a waste of life. But like you said, our government doesn't care about it, and President Obama doesn't care about it. It's just pulling his muscles up and showing us more power control. That's it. It all comes down to control.
Didn't they just have 6 soldiers killed a couple days ago in Afghanistan?
It's been consistent. They've had soldiers killed by roadside bombs, by airplane crashes, helicopter shoot-downs, shootouts, everything. It's been a pretty massacre for the United States in the last two or 3 months. And look how another thing. Yeah. Look how wimpy our army is. They can't even control themselves. They got like 3,600 sexual assaults. They've only cleared up 262 of them. What kind of armed forces do we have nowadays?
Who made it that way? If not the government.
Obama did. You got all these states becoming gay marriage states, one after another. It's like a cancer growth.
Look, you have the military where now you have women and men commingling, and they're 18, 19, 20 years old, okay? You now say gay activity is okay. So what do you think's going to happen? Look at our public school. Look at all these kids getting pregnant in public school, for gosh sakes. What do you think's going to happen in the military? If you're in the military, you're under a lot of stress, okay? And I'm telling you, and you're walking around with guns and things like that. I'm surprised there is. I'm sure, you know what? I'm sure there's more. But what? They created an environment. The government created an environment which pretty much guarantees there's going to be sexual or inappropriate sexual behavior. It's guaranteed. They've created an environment which guarantees it, and then they're shocked that it occurs. No.
But you can guarantee there's a lot of cover-ups that we'll never hear about whatsoever.
I'm sure there's more cover-ups. I'm sure there's more cover-ups than actual. But what do you want? These are 19 and 20 and 23 and 24 and 25-year-old men and women being put together in a high-stress pressure cooker environment. What the heck do you think is going to happen? These guys are going to release their frustrations, their fear, it's scary, to be in the military. In the back of your mind, you never know. You're sitting in Fort Hood, and then some jackass Arab that the officers are allowed to walk around with a gun starts, and the next thing you know, 16 soldiers are dead, okay, on a military base in the United States by an American. So supposedly American officer. My gosh, those guys in Afghanistan, they must be scared to death. I would not, and I would advise any American soldier, do not hook up with an Afghan, under no circumstance, and never, ever allow an Afghan soldier to be standing behind you, ever. You know how frightening it must be for those soldiers? They're on patrol, walking out there with no protection because the government refuses them to use armor and to do preemptive strikes. And they're in with a group of Afghan soldiers. Man, you don't know which way to look. Try to sleep. Try to sleep in an environment like that where you got enemy all around you and in your midst, not knowing which guy was going to throw a grenade into your tent or something like that. And that's what the United States government has created. The United States government did that. So, how can you blame? You almost can't blame these soldiers. You almost can't blame them. And another thing, if they're all military people, how come the women can't defend themselves? If everybody's the same, right? Because I bet you that of those 3,500 cases or whatever, 3,499 are men on women, okay? Well, they're all trying to tell us that women can handle themselves as well as men. That's why they ought to be out there. Well, if that were the case, how come they can't handle themselves? Right?
Yeah, they have to go through boot camp so they know hand-to-hand combat. A lot of them are trained in martial arts, so yeah, why not? Why can't they not?
Why can't?
Why don't the Army give them a self-defense class to teach them how to take care of themselves?
Well, they're supposed to be doing that, but the thing is that how is that? The only way that could happen is if you have like 2 against 1. That's the way it ought to be. But because if you listen to Barack Obama and Marie Antoinette Obama, if you listen to them, these women are as adept at military defense as anyone else. Then why are they such victims?
Because they're coming out of the public school system and they haven't been taught any self-discipline, and they don't get any discipline in the military, it seems like, anymore, because if there was military discipline like it used to be in World War II, these people wouldn't be doing what they're doing nowadays. It's absurd to have over 3,000 people sexually assaulted. That goes on Obama's watch, and he should be impeached just for that.
Are you kidding me?
Benghazi and all the other stuff. This guy's the most corrupt president. They talk about Clinton. This guy's 20 times worse than Clinton.
Well, you're right about that. It makes Clinton actually look good. And I think that's why the Democrat Party put him in there, was to make Clinton look good. Because all of a sudden now, Clinton looks good compared to Barack Obama. Look, Barack Obama is a useful dupe of the Northeastern elitists. That's what he is. He's second-rate intelligent. His wife, I think, is basically stupid. Okay? And so this is... this is what we have. This is what we're left with. And are you kidding me? Do you think Barack Obama gives a damn of the sexual assault? He's probably all for it. He's probably got, look, politicians are perverts. Okay, politicians are. That's why they're politicians, so they can express their perversions and get away with it. Why do you think these guys are politicians to begin with? Because they're normal? They're not normal. All politicians are perverts until proven otherwise. Let me ask you this. You got any kids?
No, I sure don't.
Well, okay. Well, I got 3 daughters. And hell, if any of them were going to be interns for any congressman or senator. That was never going to happen.
Oh, I agree with you, there.
Can you imagine
sure.
that? Can you imagine sending off your 19-year-old daughter to be an intern in the Barack Obama administration? Where the Secret Service agents are out there carousing with prostitutes.
Well, if you have 3 daughters, all I can say is you got your hands full the way this corrupt, falling apart society we have, and you have to watch out for all the sharks and venomous people are out there, because you got to protect them. That's just how it goes nowadays. You got to protect yourself, and you can't go out too far out on a limb and not stay underground. And if you expose yourself too much, the government eats it up.
You know why my girls did fine? Because their mother, my wife, brought them up in a strict religious environment. And my daughters and my son, I also have a son, they understand the difference between right and wrong, proper behavior, between proper and improper behavior. Is there any education like that in the public schools that says that gay lifestyle is as legitimate as heterosexual? That you can go ahead and here's your condoms, go ahead and do whatever the hell you want? I mean, that's the reason, because right now, we have an immoral president and government. And so where are you going to get your moral education? From Barack Obama, from Michelle Obama, from George Bush, or his stupid wife? I mean, where's morality going to come from? From our local representatives? Have them? I mean,
Doctor, you're absolutely right, because I think of all the children I know and the kids I know in this area, and the ones that are most disciplined and respectful and the most intelligent, they're the ones that are homeschooled by their parents.
Right, you got to stay.
They're so much more smarter for their age and more disciplined and respectful towards people, and have so much more respect towards life, and they're all homeschooled. And I always noticed this probably for the last 4 years.
Well, of course, and that is exactly why the government is attacking homeschooling.
Oh, yeah, because they're not exposed to all this government control and all the propaganda and what the government wants to feed the children in the public school system.
Did you know that in Sweden, homeschooling is a felony? That if you homeschool your child, you can go to jail and have your children taken away from you?
But in this a free country, United States, and shouldn't they be able to have their kids homeschooled? And that I don't see anything in the Constitution that says those kids have to go to school.
You're exactly right about that. The word education does not exist in the Constitution. And so therefore you are exactly right. But my point is, that's what government is. The bigger the government, the less independence. And if you're homeschooling your child, they're independent of government. They're independent of government public school system. They're independent of government brainwashing, and government hates that. Government wants control, and they hate homeschooling. That's why they make it difficult to homeschool.
And let them give them all their free lunches and breakfast and get them ready for their food stamps and everything else to come.
That's exactly right. Learn from a young age that the government is benevolent. Oh, who breakfast? Oh, government gave me that. Oh, lunch? Government gave me that. Condoms? Government gave me that. Okay, Scott, thanks for calling.
Take care, Doc.
Okay. I guess we're going to go to a break here shortly. Somebody called about the book. It's in the printer. Sometime the first week of June, apparently, the book will come out, at least start coming out. So, that's what they estimate. It may not be exactly that, but, sometime in June. No break yet? Okay. Have to go to a break. 7 KRV, Talkback, Dr. Lawrence Gelman, home of the microphone. 1-800-580-8255, 1-800-580-TALK, streaming live on KURV.com.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. More dangerous weather in store for the nation's midsection just days after twisters ripped through northern Texas.
That storm is now across parts of the southeast, and in fact, very heavy rain is falling, and the areas around Talladega have seen 4 to 6 inches of rain overnight, and that's causing flash flooding.
Fox meteorologist Rick Reichmuth, the Boston police commissioner, says there will be 2 separate investigations to review the response to the marathon bombing last month, and the condemnation coming from both sides of the aisle during a House committee hearing on the IRS scandal. There is is disagreement, though.
Whether they were politically motivated or just poorly thought out. And while Republicans accused the administration of targeting political foes, the outgoing IRS commissioner denied that. And the Treasury Department's Inspector General says his investigation didn't find political motives.
Fox's Wendell Goller, Senate Finance and Oversight Committees holding their hearings on the IRS next week. Fox News, we report, you decide.
Your 710 KURV AccuWeather forecast. Smoke will continue to filter the sunshine as we head through the afternoon. Windy and warm as well. Highs from 93 in the lower valley to 99 in the upper valley. Tonight, partly cloudy, mild, lows from 74 to 80. Highs tomorrow and Monday, 92 to 98, breezy and warm with a mix of clouds and sunshine. I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Bill Dagger on the Valley's official weather station, 710 KURV.
Audio streaming on KURV.com. Powered by South Texas Buick GMC, McAllen Mission.
I don't hear anything. We're back. 1-800-580-8255. 1-800-580-TALK. Streaming live on KURV.com. I saw this movie on the TV, Les Miserables. I guess it got a lot of play in the media. Oscars and all that. What a crummy movie. It's terrible. Because you're an actor doesn't mean you can sing. Those guys can't sing. The whole thing was a butcher job. I don't know what the big deal about it was. It was a terrible movie. There's a much better one. There's a number. Actually, the best one is one with Michael Rennie in 1950 or 1951. That by far is the best Les Miserables movie. If you go see the play, it's much better than the movie. The music is much better. The people can sing, so they know what they're doing. But I guess there must be people that are Hollywood favorites in there. I don't know if it's Anne Hathaway or the Wolverine or whatever the hell his name is, or what the heck's the other guy's name? Anyway, I mean, I guess the actors must be favorites or somebody in there because that movie was terrible. But who can when it comes to taste? They had this auction. Just had this auction in Sotheby's, modern art, and there's this painting, and you go online and look at it. It was a painting by some guy named Newman or something like that, and it's 2 blocks of blue and a white stripe in the middle, vertical. 2 blocks of blue, white stripe in the middle, $40 million. You telling me that's art? People who buy that stuff are, hedge fund and all that. That's why I know the hedge fund guys is just something made up to make people rich. People who really just insider government stuff. That's how they get to be wealthy. So I just thought I'd mention that. I thought Mark Rothko was the worst of it, but here's this guy Newman, even just as bad or worse. Take a look at it. Go to Sotheby's.com. The Modern Impressionist or something or other. Was this month, a couple of days ago. Look up results. You'll be amazed at what people will buy these days. But all those people are the elitists of that have ruined our society, and this is just another example. Of course, they're destroying the art world. You're getting paid $40 million for 2 blocks of blue separated by a white stripe. Well, what does that say about? What does that say about where our society and where the world is going? So we don't live in a free society. We live in a fascist tyranny. We have a useful dupe and his useless dupe wife as first family. they took over for the useful dupe that was George Bush, and now it's just like these people are so mediocre. It's so sad that this is what has taken the place of our founding fathers. When you think about what we have now, and at one time we actually had people like Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin wandering around, and of course Thomas Paine was probably the most important, most famous, or the best of them all. It's amazing that looking around at what we have today compared to what was at that time, it really is kind of sad and unfortunate. I mean, who's there to look at and who's there to trust? One thought you could trust Marco Rubio. It turns out to be nothing other than a Chuck Schumer or a Nancy Pelosi. What a disgusting people they must be. I wonder if they're different in real life than they are publicly. Usually you think you're going to be better publicly than in real life. If that's the case, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi must be really something horrendous in their private lives. But who knows? Maybe they're like lawyers putting on an act. So speaking of lawyers, look at a guy who was defending Gosnell in that Philadelphia butcher case of those children. I mean, he accuses the state prosecutor of being racially motivated, and this guy was killing black children. He was killing black children, for God's sakes. And that the child was not, it was not alive. So why'd they cut the neck? But the thing is, the child certainly was alive before the abortion of the in utero infant process. Certainly, no one doubts that. But don't you find it interesting that legality is determined not on the act but location? So if the infant is inside the uterus, you can kill the infant, but the infant is delivered. You can't kill the infant, the same infant. So the only thing that keeps an infant alive is staying inside the uterus. That's why you got to take it out. Is keeping him, if the child. So the child would be better off being born prematurely. I don't get it. So the child is, and the prosecutor is weak anyway. The child is alive in the uterus. The only reason it's not alive is because the abortionist killed the infant. So the act is not important. It's the location. So it's the location of the act that determines whether it's legal or not. Don't you find that peculiar? That if you kill the infant in the uterus, that's legal. If you kill the same infant outside the uterus, that's illegal. And so the act is the same. But the distinction is the location of the act that makes it legal or illegal. Don't you find that sick? Okay, we have Melvin again, I guess, right? Senator KRV, thanks for calling, Melvin. What's up?
Okay, still taking some questions on income tax.
Go ahead.
Okay. In 1913, you said it's quite a year. That was a big depression era right there in 1913. A bunch of things were happening.
Yeah.
And we were running out of gold and silver, that to back up our paper money. They had to create that Federal Reserve System and all that stuff. But anyway, back to income tax.
Yeah.
It was first passed. They said it's going to be 1% on the profits from big companies, but the first $4,000 would be exempted.
Yeah.
Now, the average person only made about 50 cents a day then, so they've only made a couple of $100 a year if they worked every day of the year.
Yeah.
So people, they didn't pay too much attention to it at first because it didn't affect them.
Yeah.
It didn't really start affecting them until World War II broke out.
Yeah.
And when the aircraft companies hired people for cost plus, they started them with big salaries because they were getting cost plus and paid them double time to work on Saturdays and triple time on Sundays.
Okay.
And they began to get that what they called a volunteer tax. That was called a volunteer tax at first for those years. And then they said, hey, what's this doggone tax here? Or what's this volunteer tax you're going to have to pay on April the 1st?
I get all that, but
Okay.
and?
And then in 1943, that was 30 years after.
Well, I don't really want a history lesson here.
Oh,
I mean,
okay. Well, then they started taking out payroll deductions every time.
I get all that.
Okay,
what's the point?
Now, here's the other thing. There's a big argument whether it was ratified properly or not.
No, I'm not going to discuss that. I don't even want to care about that. I'm not going to discuss that.
Okay.
If something else to talk about, we can talk about it. That's nonsense. Who cares? It's unconstitutional. Who cares if the ratification process was done properly or not?
It just backs up that unconstitutional part of it.
It's unconstitutional not because it was the way it was ratified. It's unconstitutional because it's against what the Constitution says.
Well, I pretty much agree with that in theory, right?
Not theory. The Constitution says you can't have a direct tax. The federal government cannot apply a direct tax on the individual, and that's it. And the income tax does that, so the income tax is unconstitutional. It doesn't matter how they ratified it or not. It's not the ratification process that made it unconstitutional. It's what it actually says that makes it unconstitutional.
Right. Well, some countries have a 14% flat tax for income tax across the board.
Well, what country is that?
That's Russia.
Russia?
Yeah.
Except let's go live in Russia.
Real rich people, the mafia gets away with it, but that's what they say on the talk shows.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay. Thanks for calling. All right. Now we have Will calling from Harlingen. Thanks for calling. 7 KRV.
Hey, Dr. Gelman.
Hey.
Hey. What bothers me about the abortionists too is that they have, which has my height, is they have it both ways, because this guy who held these 3 girls hostage, I thought I heard something about they're going to charge him with murder because basically he performed an abortion by punching the girl in the stomach.
He
performed an abortion, and he's going to be charged with murder.
Okay. Right.
And, but then you have a doctor that performs an abortion.
Well, wait a minute. There's a distinction. The distinction is that one is voluntarily done, the other one is involuntarily done. The abortion, the mother wants the abortion of her infant, and so the doctor performs it, so-called doctor. So that's voluntary. The mother who had her stomach beaten up and the kid killed, that was involuntary. That's the distinction there.
Yeah, I know. And it's just like you say about your distinction about location. You know, it's
right. Ultimately, it's nonsense. I get it.
Right. Exactly.
But you're talking about legally. That's why legally, according to the law, the way it is now, that's the distinction legally. You can do an abortion legally, and you can end a life. You can end it legally, and you can end it illegally. So
that's it, doctor.
That's it. Okay. Thanks for calling.
Okay.
All right. So that's the distinction there. But these are the nuances of law. Anyway, so that's what we have. What else? So anyway, I mean, everywhere you look, it's always the same thing here. It's just you have these people, government creates the false premise, and then we accept it as legitimate and then base our decisions upon those false premises. That, of course, is, complete and 100% nonsense. One day we're at war with Germany, the next day they're our allies. One day we're at war with Russia, the next day they're our allies, and the day after that they're our enemies, and the day after that they're our friends. And we go along with this nonsense because our government tells us that. Now, why we have the only reason anyone needs government is to protect us from other government. I mean, that is why the basic function of our government was to provide for a common defense. What does that mean, common defense? Well, it was a common defense because you had 13 sovereign states. And in order to provide a common defense, you had to have a national defense that protected all the states from each other, from outside invaders. And that's essentially the only reason you have a government, is to protect you. It's kind of ironic that the only reason to have a government is to protect you from other governments. But look at the way governments are. Look at the way our government is. We got troops in 150 countries. We've invaded all these other countries. that never invaded us, and we've invaded them, all to meet the conceit and arrogance of our political class. And if the other country didn't do anything, then we would create an environment which either enticed them to do it or we made it up. Whether it's the Maine explosion, which we did ourselves in order to take over Spanish property owned by Spain, or whether it was the World Trade Center where we enticed the Arab Muslims to attack us and then claimed foul, whether it was the Newtown massacre of children that was set up by the government by making sure everybody knew that all schools are completely defenseless and therefore attract these people to attack schools rather than police stations. That's all it's all about. The government creates an environment to stoke the emotion of the people of a country so they'll go to war. And so in 1944, we're enemies with the German people. In 1946, we're their friend. In 1944, we're friends with the Russians. In 1946, we're their enemies. Okay? I mean, to justify going to war, we have to create an enemy. And if the enemy doesn't oblige by doing something nasty, then we'll create an environment which makes sure that they do, even if we have to do it ourselves. And that's what we have. And so World War I was completely unnecessary. The United States entrance into World War I and the fascist Woodrow Wilson. World War II, the fascist Franklin Roosevelt. Franklin Roosevelt was the Assistant Secretary of the Navy in 1916. And he created an environment enticing or luring German submarine warfare against merchant marine ships in the United States. Merchant marine ships in the United States were transporting arms and weapons and food to England and France which is an act of war. And he did so purposefully in order to force or require essentially German submarine warfare, which were protecting their country, to attack United States shipping. And once United States shipping was attacked, it was easily enough done by the Congress to convince everybody that we needed to go to war. Franklin Roosevelt, did exactly the same thing in World War II. He created an environment which enticed the Japanese to attack Pearl Harbor. Interestingly enough, every single American carrier, suspiciously, was not in Pearl Harbor. We had every American carrier in the Pacific Fleet was out. What a coincidence. It's almost as if Roosevelt knew something was going on. So we lost some soldiers and a few battleships, and of no real significance. Sorry for the soldiers, but we lost another 400,000. We lost, a couple thousand sailors and soldiers were killed in the Japanese attack. But the war cost Americans another 400,000 casualties, and I don't know how many injured. Permanently maimed. I don't know how many hundreds of thousands soldiers were maimed for life. Just so Franklin Roosevelt could stand astride of the world. But he was so insipidly weak and feeble-minded that he ended up handing it all to Joseph Stalin and to Mao Zedong. And so we liberated who? Nobody. And then we handed over 1 billion people to the communists in Russia and in China. So much for the Great Liberation. And of course, we helped kill 6 million Jews, and that took care of the Jewish problem, which the United States was trying to deal with as well. It wasn't only the Germans who were trying to deal with the Jewish problem. The British also were dealing with the Jewish problem. The British passed their white paper in 1939 prohibiting immigration into Palestine, now Israel and Palestine, of Jews from Europe, or from anywhere for that matter. And only Jews, if you're Arab or any other nationality, you could go to Palestine. Only Jews were blocked from coming in. And who helped them? Golda Meir helped them. Ben Gurion helped them. A bunch of Jewish individuals helped the British in preventing Jews from coming into Palestine. Why? In order to maintain their political power. Let's talk about Hungary for a second. In 1944, Hungary's Jewish population was untouched by the Holocaust. This was in June of 1944. The Germans sent about 24 SS officers to help the Hungarian government dispatch Jews to Germany. There were no concentration camps or gas chambers in Hungary itself, so they had to be transported to Poland and other places in order to exterminate the Jews of Hungary, of which are numbered a little over 800,000. 24 SS officers. That's all they sent. Now, this is June of 1944, which is 13 months after the Warsaw Uprising and the extermination, the absolute and complete extermination of Jews in Poland, as it already had been done in other countries, including Germany. So by the time the Hungarian Jews were targeted, well over 2 million, 3 million, probably about 4 million, somewhere around, probably around 3 to 4 million Jews had already been exterminated by the Nazis and their collaborators, which included Great Britain and the United States. Why did the Hungarian Jews do nothing? Well, the Hungarian Jews, like every other European country and Israel, Palestine, had what they call a Jewish council in every city. And then the Jewish council, in order to protect their political power, the Jewish council sold out the Jewish citizens and handed them over to the Nazis and the Hungarian fascists. The Jews went docilely onto the trains, having been told by their Jewish council they were going to labor camps, though knowing full well they were going to extermination camps. Oftentimes there would be hundreds or maybe even thousands of Jews transported on a train at a time with 1 or 2 German guards. That was all. 1 or 2 German guards. But so indoctrinated and complacent were the Jews of Hungary, as the Jews of Europe were, that they listened to their Jewish council leaders, and who were offered protection by the Nazis and the fascists if they went along with what the Nazis wanted to do, and they did so. And so the Jews turned over the Jews to be exterminated, and they did that, and it's well documented that was done. Many of those Jews ended up in the Israeli government in 1948. So it wasn't as it's always being portrayed. The Jews of Hungary could have defended themselves if they had not been so indoctrinated to believe government and to believe the Jewish council. But ultimately, you can say this. The bottom line is that the Jews of Hungary were exterminated. 75% of them were exterminated in the course of like 2 or 3 months. It was a very short period of time that the extermination of around 600,000 Jews of the 800,000 Jews in Hungary took place. The single most important factor which resulted in the killing, extermination, murdering of 600,000 Jews in Hungary was that they were unarmed. If the Jews of Hungary had been armed, it never could have happened. It would have been impossible. It would have been absolutely impossible. Because if the Jews in Hungary had been armed, they would have resisted or had the means to resist. And even a small resistance would have prevented. Remember, you only had 24 Nazis there. And Germany was being forced back on all fronts. The Nazis, they couldn't really afford to have sent out any more people out there. they relied on the Hungarian fascists to complete the job that the Nazis had started. If the Jews had been armed, and for all the Steven Spielberg jackasses who want to take away your gun, and every other Jewish producer in the United States that agrees with Barack Obama to take away your gun, you must remember this. The reason there are so few Jews left in Hungary is because they were unarmed. And the Jews of Poland were unarmed. And Jews of Germany were unarmed. And the only reason Israel exists is because they're an armed nation. Not a coincidence. The only reason Israel exists is because it's an armed nation. Israel was not won through debate. And the United States was not created through a debate. It was born through armed violence. And that's what it takes when you're up against Hitlers and you're up against people like what we have running our government and King George III. 710 KRV, talk by Dr. Lawrence Gelman, home there on microphone. Be back next week with more enlightenment.